Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Fairfax Egg Bank team today as we talk to Dr. Aimee about why she partners with Fairfax Egg Bank for frozen donor eggs. Again, thank you and welcome. Today is Fairfax Egg Bank's webinar. Our webinar series is designed to help intended parents learn more about the benefit of using frozen donor eggs. On behalf of my team, we are all very happy to welcome our guest, Dr. Aimee. Welcome. We recognize how important it is to hear from experts who work with intended parents just like you. Dr. Aimee will share her experience about working with donor egg IVF patients and why she chooses to partner with Fairfax Egg Bank. A brief overview of what we are going to cover today is, first we'll begin by meeting Dr. Aimee, really delve into how egg freezing has changed and evolved, review some of the benefits of frozen donor egg, really discuss what you as an intended parent should expect from an egg bank, and then end with how to begin working with Fairfax Egg Bank. I do, however, want to start and pick your brain with a quick poll. The question, do you feel confident choosing an egg donor from a frozen egg bank?
Okay, we've got 32%, I feel confident, 65, I need more information. Well, it's changed a little bit here. But we've got a bunch of good responses here. So we'll take the poll again at the end.
Great. It's really good to see how you where you all are, and I hope you leave today's webinar with a lot of great information. So Dr. Aimee, you are known as the Egg Whisperer, but more than that, your patients truly benefit from your personalized approach to helping them on their IVF journey. Many of you intended parents might recognize Dr. Aimee from the amazing podcasts and videos she shares online to explain different fertility procedures or her appearances on programming like Good Morning America. I do want to begin by talking a little bit about Dr. Aimee's individualized approach and the different ways that you help your patients think about their fertility so that they are more informed. What has helped shape your practice, Dr. Aimee?
I think all the experiences I have had by working with thousands of people in this country, across the globe, has really made me a better doctor. And I feel strength, and I get my energy from working with patients every single day, especially now more than ever because of what's going on with the pandemic. You can imagine that people are realizing how important family truly is. And, people who are on the outside who don't, aren't thinking about fertility, they don't realize that people actually want babies more than ever now because of how people are realizing how much family matters. And, working with you guys has been awesome because my pregnancy rate, you're paying me a lot of money to be here today, right, Amanjot?
Yes, I'll Venmo you afterwards. Don't you worry.
Guys, Fairfax isn't paying me anything. My pregnancy rate with Fairfax is literally 100%. I know that it's not going to stay 100% forever, but they make me look good. Success matters the most to me. And my style is diagnosis before treatment. And you can imagine that a lot of patients who get to the point where they're ready for an egg donor, they've been through a lot. They already know their diagnosis and they're ready for something that's going to work. And I always tell patients that using donor eggs is okay, and I think in the beginning people they have a hard time getting there. And for us, once we're here, we are fired up. We are excited to find an awesome donor to work with. And you guys just do such a great job making me look good every day. It's not about me, I know, it's about growing families. And so I just want to say thank you to you, Amanjot, for all the work that you do for all my patients.
I appreciate that. No, I love hearing that. And truthfully, it is a team effort, but likewise, you make us look very good. And I hope to continue that 100% pregnancy rate.
Yes.
And then can you share a little bit about what you recommend your patients look for in an egg donor and why you choose to partner with Fairfax?
From the first pregnancy and beyond, it's like you guys have these frozen golden eggs. They literally are probably sparkling in the tanks over there, I imagine. And, I would say it's the quality of the donors that you have. You obviously screen them very well. I've actually had donors through agencies that have been very highly compensated go through an agency, and then I see them in your egg bank. And so I know you guys do an amazing job recruiting, because these are high quality donors that I've also cycled through myself through agencies, and you guys now, are using them and have them frozen. So, I mean, I think that having high quality donors is obviously number one, extremely high pregnancy rates, transparency and honesty. I asked you guys a question, within an hour or less, I have a very detailed answer. Any follow-ups, you guys always know how to get me the information that I need to best help my patients. And then the transparent outcomes is part of that too. So I'm always asking you guys, like, what kind of success have you seen with this donor before? So I ask questions of you guys that patients don't know how to ask themselves. And so I always want to look out for my patient and their best interest, but I know you guys are doing the same. So you guys you can tell that you're not in it, like you're in it to grow families, and so am I. And so obviously we're all coming from the same place, and that's what makes this super, super fun. And I also, you guys have different programs, and, you have a certain set, guarantee of, and I'm sure you'll talk about that later as well. I won't get into that. But I think knowing that patients will get a set number of eggs, I think is really important. So sometimes people feel like they're taken advantage of. For example, they get a guarantee, but maybe you'll only thaw 1 or 2 eggs for them to reach that guarantee. And that can be a little frustrating when people actually would love the opportunity to have more embryos if possible from the set number of eggs that they buy. So those are just a handful of reasons why I really like partnering with you guys. And I always tell my patients about your egg bank.
I appreciate hearing that. I love hearing that. And I think, to your point, 1% of all donor applicants actually go on to cycle for Fairfax Egg Bank. Our donor coordination team thoroughly reviews donors, whether it's looking at 3 generations medical history, really trying to offer patients the best chance at walking away and building their family. And like you mentioned, we are an egg bank started by an embryologist, so we really come to this with the ultimate goal of building families. Now, with that being said, are there concerns or questions that you hear from patients that are looking to use frozen donor egg, and what kind of language do you use to reassure them?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is finding a good match and finding someone that resembles them or finding some sort of connection. And I tell my patients that you're not gonna, I mean, sometimes we find someone, I'm like, holy smokes, it's like, is that you? I mean, as far as how they look and physical characteristics and background. But I tell patients to find someone, they don't have to look exactly like you, but find something that you feel a connection with. And that's number one. And a lot of times my patients are able to find that. So that's their biggest concern, is that they won't find a good match. And I think more times than not, I would say probably 90% of my patients do find a match with you guys, which makes my life very easy, because you guys make the actually, before I forget this thought, the other thing that patients are concerned about is time. As soon as they make the decision to use an egg donor, they're like, when can I have my embryos? And that's another huge plus of working with you guys, because the systems that we have in place are extremely streamlined and efficient. And so if I had a patient pick a donor today, I'm not making promises for other clinics, but you guys can move things along with me so that we can have embryos here within 2 months, which is pretty remarkable.
I appreciate that. And I think, talking about donor diversity and donor portfolios, one of the things that frozen egg banks have really been able to introduce is allowing recipients to pick from a more diverse donor pool than what might be available just locally. So we do recruit from across the country, and that is why we're able to have a really diverse and extensive donor portfolio available on our websites at all times. And like you mentioned, really to address your patient's concern about using donor eggs, and specifically frozen donor eggs, I can imagine that that's an incredibly emotional discussion, as this tends to be a fertility treatment that is typically done after many other approaches have been tried. And we will talk a little bit about success rates and touch on the benefits of frozen donor egg, and of course working with Fairfax Egg Bank. But can you talk a little bit about some of the common questions they have when they start the process? They've acknowledged that donor egg is their next treatment journey. What are they looking to you for when they begin that process?
For me, it's like, is genetic testing something I should do? Yes or no? What are the options there? And most of my patients choose genetic testing. I've had a couple that have decided that they didn't want to do the PGT part, and that's fine too. And those patients actually have been successful as well. So I think those are the big questions that I get. And then for me as a doctor, it's like, how am I going to prepare you for the transfer? Should we do implantation testing? Have we done a preconception panel recently? Have we ruled out a polyp? So those are all the things that go into also making sure that that embryo has the best chance of implanting.
No, and I love hearing that. I think it's so important, providers like you that really offer an individualized and personalized approach to their patients. And I think one of the things that has changed quite a bit that I did want to talk about is the fact that we are able to freeze eggs now. So many, many years ago, the technology used for freezing, cryopreservation, was not delicate enough or sensitive enough for the egg. The egg is very delicate, and what would happen is during that process, intracellular ice crystals would form, and when you went to warm the egg, the egg would not survive the warming, or if it did, there was very poor development. And now with the advent of vitrification, which is a really fast freezing technique, what it does is it preserves the integrity of the egg. So when it's warm for fertilization, there's a higher chance that the egg will fertilize and then develop to the blastocyst stage. And so one of the things that Fairfax Egg Bank really prides itself on is being an organization, like I mentioned earlier, that's founded by a scientist, an embryologist, someone who is focused on developing the most effective vitrification and warming techniques. And the Fairfax Egg Bank freezing and warming protocol is truly state of the art and makes it so that eggs are stable for the long term. And so Dr. Aimee, with these advances in vitrification and specifically egg freezing, how does this affect how you advise your patients about their options for donor egg IVF?
I mean, I think with vitrification, people aren't as afraid of losing eggs along the way. The thaw survival rate is extremely high. The blast formation rate is extremely high. And the other thing that I would say about the egg viability is forever we were always thinking of frozen eggs as being less good than fresh. And I think now we can seriously say, not every lab is going to be like this, but with Fairfax, that frozen is just as good as fresh.
Absolutely.
And there are so many, benefits, like you already mentioned, but knowing that you have a number of donors ready to go, timing is not an issue as far as syncing your cycle up with someone else's cycle, and all those things that can happen that you hear about as far as a donor, let's say, dropping out of a cycle or having a positive STD test, or her mother finding out that she's going to be a donor and then her mom saying you can't do it. These are the kinds of things that I have to deal with when I'm cycling a fresh donor, quite honestly. And knowing that the eggs are already frozen, we don't have to worry about those kinds of things when we're using an egg from Fairfax.
No, absolutely. And I think that really goes into the point that choosing frozen donor eggs will reduce uncertainty, whether it's, being able to find a donor, like you mentioned, that your patients really relate to, being able to pull from a diverse pool, timing cycles, that idea of donors no longer have to be synced to a recipient. And ultimately, I think egg banks have made it so that donor egg IVF is more affordable and makes it so, like you mentioned earlier, patients know what they're getting. They're not going to have an issue where a donor drops out, and they're not going to be on the hook financially for a donor that doesn't produce eggs for them. And so, continuing that thought, Fairfax Egg Bank truly values transparency, and we understand that transparency of information is critical to anyone considering working with an egg bank for donor egg IVF. One interesting thing to note is that 2018 was the first time ever that in the US, the number of donor egg cycles using frozen donor eggs surpassed those using fresh donor eggs. And I do think this is the direct result of the increasing success intended parents are finding with donor egg banks. So internally at Fairfax, we have been tracking success rates across all of our partner sites for a number of years. And as clinics become more and more accustomed to working with frozen donor eggs, those success rates have improved year over year. So the data you see here is an aggregate across all of our 300 plus clinic partners domestically and internationally. We do not cherry pick the data. So for the year of 2019, 93% of eggs survived the warming process. 69% of warmings resulted in cases with 2 or more embryos that were either vitrified, transferred, or biopsied. We have a 66% clinical pregnancy rate, a 55% clinical pregnancy rate, and a 48% live birth rate. And like Dr. Aimee mentioned, intended parents are focused on building their family, but you also have practical considerations and concerns. How much will it cost? Will you be able to find a donor that meets your criteria? And there are added concerns if you are using a fresh donor. How many eggs will your donor produce? Will the eggs be eligible? Will there be a positive STD test? And the donor could cancel. And the list goes on, and I don't want to alarm you. But with choosing frozen donor egg, you're reducing that uncertainty. So at Fairfax, many of those concerns are addressed up front and so that they are eliminated. There is a flat fee for a standard cohort of donor eggs. There's no hidden fees, there's no upcharges, and every purchased cohort of eggs comes with an embryo development guarantee and a shipment guarantee. All of our donors are pre-screened and have already been determined to be FDA eligible. If they are available on our website, they are ready to be shipped, so you do not have to wait. In addition, you will know how many eggs you will receive at the time you reserve your cohort or cohorts, and our team will work directly with your clinic like Dr. Aimee and on your schedule. Cohorts can be secured until you are ready to ship, and then once you are ready, they'll be shipped in advance of your cycle. So all of these steps on our part are truly geared to help reducing anxiety and stress on yours. So Dr. Aimee, COVID-19, like you mentioned, has truly affected every facet of our lives and has profoundly changed everything we do, how we work, how we eat, how we socialize. In your practice, how has COVID-19 changed how you and your team interact with patients and how you ultimately manage their care?
Yeah, I mean, we want to keep everybody safe. So we have our new normal, and our new normal is basically what everyone would assume, basically wearing masks. We don't have a waiting room. Patients call before they come in, and then we let them come in. The downside, I mean, obviously, we're able to handle the volume of patients that we can handle. The only thing that makes me sad is we don't allow support people or loved ones in the clinic for obvious reasons. And it doesn't seem like that's going to change anytime soon. So for patients who are doing an embryo transfer, for example, a loved one cannot be there with you. And the IVF lab has very strict protocols as far as, that, and they don't make any exceptions. And then everyone needs to have COVID testing done, and every lab's going to be different as far as when that COVID test needs to be done. For us, it's within 14 days of a procedure like an egg retrieval or a transfer. So that's kind of how it's changed, and we notice that patients are more stressed than ever, and so we want to make sure that we deal with the mental health aspect of what you're going through. And so we have therapists, and we also refer you to support groups online for both one-on-one support and group support. So there's so many ways of getting support right now, and being connected to people in the world is really important now more than ever. So that's really important to us, and something that we're talking about even more with COVID.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I think I FaceTime my parents now more than I ever did before. And I think they appreciate it. Hopefully they do. And I do want to talk a little bit about some of the concerns intended parents can have with moving forward with donor egg, especially during COVID. So as we know, many patients have questions about safety and protocol, and your clinic, like Dr. Aimee mentioned, will have its own requirements for patient safety. And when it comes to working with donor egg, there are advantages here to choosing frozen donor egg. In fact, all of the benefits we covered before are amplified right now. So the unpredictability in many aspects of donor egg IVF treatment is being compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic. In the best of times, coordinating with a donor schedule could be challenging, but now we have increased screenings, safety protocols, and staff shortages. And these variables can affect a patient's timeline when you are dependent on a fresh donor, not to mention the reliability of the actual donor or the success of the cycle. And with a fresh donor, there continues to be no guarantee on how many eggs will be retrieved or embryo development. And recipients are on the hook for the cost of retrievals, regardless of the outcome. So the benefit of frozen donor egg, the recipient and donor location is not a concern. The eggs are shipped to your clinic. And in addition, you have an embryo development guarantee. So if the cohort does not result in an embryo and all the conditions are met, we will replace the cohort for free. This level of flexibility and reliability has been put in place by Fairfax Egg Bank to provide you, the intended parent, peace of mind in what has truly become a very unpredictable world. And in addition to that, at Fairfax Egg Bank, our donors' health and safety is also top of mind. So although there's no scientific evidence for the transmission of SARS-CoV-2 through eggs, Fairfax Egg Bank is really taking a proactive approach to mitigate risk. So for each cycle, the donors undergo a COVID-19 questionnaire and viral RNA testing. The questionnaire is designed to really evaluate the donor for common symptoms associated with the virus, as well as exposure history. That is done at the beginning of her cycle and then again just before retrieval. And similarly, the RNA testing is done at the beginning of her cycle and again just before her retrieval. If a donor is found to be positive or at risk of being exposed, the cycle is canceled and the donor is deferred. So Dr. Aimee, we've talked a little bit about the benefits and success rates, and I would love to hear from you. When your patients are ready to move forward, what do you advise that they look for in an egg bank?
So I would say diversity of donors is number one, and success rates is number two. So finding a donor that you're really excited to work with, and it sounds silly for people who are watching this who aren't quite there yet, but all of a sudden the switch will go on and you'll be like, I'm super excited and I can't wait to find a donor that's going to help me be a parent. And so that's number one, is diversity and finding a really good connection like we talked about early on. And then you guys are making me look good every day. And I know that you quoted a 50% or just under 50% live birth rate, I think, with the data that you presented. But with me, I have not had a live birth with you guys so far. Streamlined process, you're very easy to communicate with, your entire team, your embryologist, everyone is like on the same page, well aligned with honesty and transparency, basically like, you know, tattooed on your foreheads. That's what I look for most, because I've actually, you know, I know I look very young, but I've been around a while. And so I've seen a lot of things in my day, and there are a lot of people that I will absolutely not work with. So if I have patients that say, I want an egg from this egg bank, I say, no, trust me, do not do it. And these are the top banks, and Fairfax is number one.
I appreciate that. And I think what you have found and what you have experienced is truly the Fairfax Egg Bank commitment to excellence. And we, for example, in the shipping component, the world is very global now. And what is happening is patients are moving around more and more often. And so Fairfax Egg Bank maintains and services its own fleet of liquid nitrogen shippers so that we have the tightest control over it. And I think that speaks to our rigorous QA process, but also our deep-seated need to ensure that every aspect of the process is controlled by people that we trust, that are truly looking for, you know, your best interest and your patient's best interest. So I love hearing that, and thank you so much for sharing it. And I think from what you said, our client relations team is really trying to work in parallel to your approach. They want intended parents to feel supported every step of the way to make sure that they find the perfect match and are able to coordinate with their clinic seamlessly. We provide a personal service to ensure that your patients have someone there throughout the entire process, explaining the process and the embryo development guarantee and the shipping guarantee, while answering any questions your intended parents may have. And we'll touch a little bit later on about some of the information that's found on the donor profile, but truly our goal is continuous support and transparency. We report outcomes across all partner clinics. We provide abundant information about donors and the extent of their testing, their latest genetic testing information. We have set costs, and like I mentioned, a really rigorous QA protocol throughout the entire process, recruiting donors, retrieving donors, and shipping donors. We really tighten that down and make it so that we truly believe that every cohort of eggs that goes out has the best chance of establishing families. Now, I do want to briefly cover how detailed our donor search is for those intended parents on here today that have not yet had a chance to look at our website. I highly encourage all of you to log in. It is free of charge to begin with Fairfax Egg Bank. So the best place to start here is our donor egg database, which you can find easily at fairfaxeggbank.com. There are clear links to it from anywhere on the website. And when you are in the database, you'll be able to use any of the tools to filter what is most important to you, whether it be race, hair color, eye color, education, religion. I encourage you to begin by selecting the filter that is the most important and beginning your search from there. We recommend beginning with a broad search and then narrowing it down from there. If you need assistance, the client relations team is happy to work with you and look through the egg donor database with you. Fairfax Egg Bank has an extensive and diverse donor selection available on the website, and all of our donors on the website have cohorts that are immediately available, and all of our donors are pre-screened and FDA eligible. This is a sample donor from our website. We offer both childhood and adulthood photos on all of our donors. In order to see those, recipients do have to register, and again, there is no fee to register or view these photos. On the website, you'll also find 3 generations of medical history, audio interviews of our donors, essays that the donors have written, and genetic testing information about the donor, which I'll get into in just a little bit. Now, Dr. Aimee, is there something in particular that you recommend your patients keep as a priority when looking for a donor, or is that really something that you leave up to them?
I would just tell them listening to their gut is really important, or listen to your uterus. And
Love
when
it.
your uterus starts to cramp, that might be the donor for you. No, I'm kidding. I don't say that. But I would say keeping as a priority is looking at the genetic screen and make sure that the sperm source is also genetically compatible. And you guys do a really great job doing that. So we always make sure that the sperm source has had a carrier screen, and that the sperm source is actually, if the sperm source is positive, making, you have to look at compatibility in both directions. So you guys do a great job of helping me with that as well.
I appreciate that. And that actually ties in really well. The genetic testing has really evolved over the last few years. And really, because of that, reproductive genetic risks are known now more than ever before. We are able to use the egg donor and the recipient sperm source and make sure that they're matched appropriately, which ultimately reduces their chance of having offspring with genetic disease. And like Dr. Aimee mentioned, we have genetic counselors available to help you choose the right donor and do what are called suitability determinations. So historically, donors had very limited genetic testing, and over time, with how much genetic testing screening has changed, more and more conditions are able to be screened for. It's more available now than it ever was before. And because of that, the donors that enter our program, at the time that they enter, are tested with the widest panel available. And on our website, if you see a donor that has a double helix icon, that means that they have undergone expanded genetic testing. The C after the donor number indicates that this donor is a healthy carrier of one or more genetic conditions, which your client relations specialist will work with you and your clinic to ensure that you have all of this information in advance, and will work with you to determine suitability using our in-house genetic counselors. And so just to keep in mind, with this genetic testing, research shows 70+% of the population are found to be healthy carriers of one or more conditions. And so in looking at how to work with Fairfax Egg Bank, there's really 4 key steps. The first is consult with your IVF clinic. Your healthcare provider may request additional testing to confirm that you are a suitable candidate. Currently, Fairfax Egg Bank is affiliated with more than 300 IVF clinics in the US, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Australia. So it's likely that your clinic is affiliated with us. However, if they're not, don't worry, you can still purchase frozen donor eggs, and we will work on our end to get your clinic affiliated. So to begin your search, visit our website, fairfaxeggbank.com, and from there you can view the full profiles. Again, you must register on the website, but registration is free and access is truly unlimited. And I know that the donor search process can be overwhelming. So once you register, a member of our client relations team will reach out and contact you to assist you every step of the way. You can send them your favorite donors, and they are the ones that will be able to provide you more information about how many frozen donor eggs are available for purchase on a particular donor. So just please know, though, that donor availability is on a first come, first served basis, and cohorts can only be held through our client relations team. They can be held at no cost for 2 business days, and at that point, step 3 begins. So step 3 is your client relations specialist will work with you and your clinic to complete required documents. The process to secure a cohort is completed fairly quickly, within 7 calendar days. Your client relations specialist is available to answer any questions you may have about the process. And the final step is either coordinating shipping to your clinic or keeping your cohort in storage until you are ready. And once your clinic is ready to receive the cohort, we will coordinate shipping with them. And really, just please know that our dedicated client relations team is here to help you every step of the way. And Dr. Aimee, I know you've worked with us for a little while now. How has your experience with these different facets of our team been, the embryology, donor coordinators, and the client relations specialist?
I honestly have never had a single problem with any part of the process from start to finish. You guys understand how my patients want, like how badly they want to be parents. And so like, you guys are yes people. Anytime I ask a question, it's like, what can I do for you? How can I help? And that's my philosophy and how I care for my patients. And so it's nice to have a like-minded team. And I feel like we need to change your egg bank to Egg Whisperer Egg Bank. So maybe we can talk to somebody about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, you guys are really great, and you make something that can be very overwhelming and scary and anxiety provoking, really easy and simple at the end of the day.
We really truly want to be an extension of your team, of any clinic that we work with. And I think that's why the client relations team, each clinic has a designated and a dedicated client relations specialist so that they know how clinics are structured, who point people are. And what that does is it truly creates a seamless process for intended parents that are moving through and working to select an egg donor. So in addition to the client relations specialists who you know will be with you every step of the way, our team includes embryologists who have decades of experience and have been on the cutting edge of new techniques for just as long. Our team of donor coordinators who are dedicated to working with our donors to ensure that our process is thorough and that they are held to the highest standards. And like I mentioned before, 1% of donor applications actually become a donor that cycles in our program. And I hope that speaks to the rigor of what we are screening for and what we are excluding when looking at applications that come in for our program. And so I hope and I sincerely believe that you will find that Fairfax Egg Bank's commitment to donor quality and service excellence make us a premier and cost-effective solution for recipients looking to pursue donor egg IVF. We have reviewed some of the benefits of the frozen donor egg program here at Fairfax, and these benefits have only been amplified during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So when you are ready to begin this journey, frozen donor eggs are ready. You will have added peace of mind with Fairfax Egg Bank's complimentary 3-month storage on site, an embryo development guarantee, and a shipment guarantee. Fairfax Egg Bank's experience and industry-leading techniques are truly second to none in the field of egg banking. And I'll say this again, our client relations team truly is here to help support you every step of the way because together we build families. And so I know a great deal of information has been shared today. Another poll, please. So I'd like to take the poll again to see if anything has changed. Do you feel more confident choosing an egg donor from a frozen donor egg bank?
Okay, so collecting responses. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this.
And the voice that you hear is my wonderful colleague, Jess, the Oz.
Hi, guys. So we got a massive I feel confident rate, which is really impressive.
And I'm glad to hear that. Dr. Aimee is a wonderful partner of ours, and we appreciate her time. And so I do want to look at some of the questions that you all have sent in. I appreciate all of the questions that we have received. And so I guess, Dr. Aimee, one of the questions in particular for you is, over time, have you transitioned more to frozen donor eggs with your patients?
Yes, I would say 90% of my patients who are using an egg donor are using eggs from an egg bank. I still do cycle donors through fresh cycles. You know, I used to probably do 5 to 10 a month, and now I do 1 to 10 a month, and the majority are eggs from egg banks.
Okay, well, that's great to hear. And then should I have my husband tested for genetic diseases before we pick a donor, or should we wait until we pick a donor and know what she is a carrier for?
I would screen the husband first. I would do all the advanced testing. I would do semen analysis. I would look at DNA fragmentation, especially if your partner's over the age of 40 or under age 40 with other chronic medical problems. Have them see a urologist. Remember, those eggs are sparkling and you want your embryos to sparkle too. So every embryo is half egg, half sperm. So you want to make sure you're doing your due diligence with sperm in the same way that you're going through everything with a fine-tooth comb when it comes to the egg part too.
No, and I appreciate that. A question here, because of COVID-19, I'm still not quite comfortable going to my doctor's office. How long can the egg stay frozen? Months, years, forever? Great question. So with vitrification, yeah, forever. You're right, with vitrification, truthfully, it's kept in this glass-like state, and we have seen successful warming and live births many, many years later. Dr. Aimee, is there a time frame in your practice that you've seen? Vitrification is still a relatively new technology, but freezing, I think the longest I've seen is 22 years later.
Yeah, I think 25 to 28 years for embryo freezing. For eggs, the oldest egg that I've thought, I think, was from 2005 so far, and it did great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And another question, how many cohorts are available for each donor on the site? Great question. So the client relations team is really who you need to contact in order to hold a donor and learn about how many cohorts are available. Our inventory, like I said, is first come, first serve, and they are the ones that would be able to tell you how many eggs are available for a particular donor for you to purchase. If I like a donor and she is no longer available, how long should I wait for her to become available again? Great question. So again, I really highly recommend that you reach out to your client relations team. Sometimes an ASRM, the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, has created guidelines for how often and the maximum lifetime cycles for a donor, which Fairfax Egg Bank follows. And so it's possible that the donor has completed her maximum lifetime cycles and will not be returning. Your client relations team is really truly the ones that can provide information. And in addition, if she is not returning, I will tell you they know our donor portfolio so well. I mean, if I tell them, find me someone that looks like Zooey Deschanel, dark hair, light eyes, I can probably within a minute, I would have a list of 7 or 8 people that they really thought looked like Zoe. They truly know, and they know if they're available. They are the gatekeepers to it, and they are so knowledgeable and so very, very helpful. A question, with frozen donor eggs, I would not have the opportunity to get to know my donor. Is it possible for my child to meet the donor? So with Fairfax Egg Bank, we have an option program that's called ID. So on our website, you might notice that there's donors that have an ID. That means that when you have a live birth, you can register your child so that when the child turns 18, they are given the donor's last known contact information. These are donors that have proactively opted into this program. Not all of our donors will be part of that program. I'm so sorry, there's just Dr. Aimee, have you had a great deal of success using frozen donor egg with Fairfax or other companies?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've had great success, especially with you guys.
Love it.
I have a few as well that I want to add in.
Yes, please.
I'm 45. Is it still okay to carry the embryo?
From my perspective, I offer gestational carriers to everyone who's in their 40s, especially over the age of 45. There are higher risks with pregnancy, and pregnancy does take a toll on our body, especially for women over 40. However, if you've been medically cleared by your OBGYN, and every clinic will have their own checklist that you need to go through to make sure that you're cleared to carry a pregnancy, I do think that women over 45 can absolutely carry a healthy pregnancy. And even women who are 50, I think one of my oldest pregnancies was from actually Fairfax, and she had a live birth, I think at 51 or 52, and she did awesome. And so pregnancy isn't for everybody over the age of 45. And so men get to be parents without being pregnant. And I feel like women get to have that same choice, especially if you're over 45. So you can carry a pregnancy. There are risks associated with pregnancy in women who are over 40, especially 45, but talk to your OBGYN about those risks and see if it's something that you want to do, and then figure out if pregnancy is something for you.
And also one of the other questions was, if my clinic is not affiliated with Fairfax Egg Bank, can you circle back to that when you talked about affiliating with clinics while going through the securing your donor process?
Absolutely. So if you're working with a clinic that is not currently affiliated, that's absolutely not a problem. You can absolutely go ahead and work with a dedicated client relations team member to secure your donor and complete all the required paperwork on your end. On our end, we will work with the nursing team, the lab team, and the medical provider team at your clinic to make sure that they have all the information that they need to optimize your success using frozen donor egg. That includes sharing a proprietary warming protocol and really providing them ongoing support throughout our relationship with them. So please don't be discouraged if your clinic is not currently affiliated. We are happy to proactively reach out and work with clinics and create new clinic partners.
One of the other questions is how, with frozen donor eggs, for biosiblings, if our cohorts obviously are between 6 to 8 eggs per cohort, and even though, on the website it'll have, if the donor is there and available, we know that she has a cohort available. She may have more. But when it comes to asking questions, how many cohorts to purchase for biosiblings, In terms of what you've experienced in the past, Dr. Aimee, how many do you typically recommend that they purchase?
It basically depends on what do they want and what's it going to take. So if you want more than one baby, and gender, for example, is really important to you, we wait and see what we get from the first cohort, and then immediately once we have results, we'll get the second cohort. And I've had patients that are unsure if they want a second baby, and let's say, you know, everyone's situation is different. So I've had patients purchase a second cohort, but just not create embryos up front. And so they'll have that cohort, just know that they're going to have biosiblings in the future. So you can be creative about that, you know, the answer to that question just based on what's important to you.
Okay. And can you repeat what tests the husband should have conducted for sperm analysis, or
Absolutely.
partner should have for sperm analysis?
Yeah, so every state is different as far as, and every clinic's different as far as what the infectious disease requirements are. So for example, in the state of California, it's HIV, HCLV, Hep B, Hep C, and syphilis. Not every state has HCLV as a requirement, as an example. So you have to see what the STD requirements are. I recommend a semen analysis within 6 months of embryo creation. Depending on the age of the husband, I also recommend a sperm DNA fragmentation test. I always ask the sperm source, I call them sources, to also take prenatal vitamins, a sperm-friendly supplement. And, you know, I tell guys to go to sperm boot camp. There's a boot camp down the street. There isn't, but that's something else that I joke about too.
Mm-hmm.
No more jacuzzi time, for sure.
No.
I want to make sure that it's also clear that every clinic across the country that we partner with, we have different arrangements. So it's important that when you're looking at what your options are for buying cohorts, et cetera, it's important to work directly with your clinic and with one of our client relations members to discuss what your options are.
Absolutely.
There was a question here on a military discount, which we do offer.
Yes, absolutely. We do
we
also
offer
do.
free, yeah.
Sorry, no, go ahead, Jess.
No, go ahead.
It's
we do have
free
our
shipping.
Perfect.
And that's for active and veterans.
Correct. And I think those are all the questions I have on my side. Many of the questions that came through would have to be answered directly because they're very personal and we respect everyone's privacy. So anyone that has a question on here, we will reach out to you individually and make sure that you have answers to the questions.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Jess. And this is great timing because my dog has now started to cry in the background. Well, Dr. Aimee, listen, I love working with you and your intended parents. Thank you again. You have the busiest schedule of anyone I know for taking time and sitting down with me. I highly encourage everyone on this call to take a look at her social media, her videos, her podcast. She is a wealth of knowledge, and she truly wants every fertility patient to feel as well informed and really truly make the decision that's going to help them best build their family. So thank you, Dr. Aimee, on behalf of the Fairfax Egg Bank team.
You're welcome. Thank you, Emma and Joe. I really appreciate you guys and all you're doing for families as well.
For our intended parents, please reach out, info@fairfaxeggbank.com. Please register on the Fairfax Egg Bank website. You'll be able to, once you register, be able to view all of our donors. And with that, I bid you a good night.